Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the City Future Committee meeting Tuesday, 25th of November. In terms of health and safety, if the alarm sounds, please make your way to the nearest exit and assemble north down Devonport Road. Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and the video will be publicly available on YouTube. Members, please remember to speak clearly into your microphones and only one speaker at a time for clarity. And please turn your phones to silent or off. Thank you. Councillor Rolleston, may we have an opening karakia, please?
Tēnā koe, Chair. E honore ki te whakatūwhera tēnei hui. It's my honour to open the hui. Nā mihi mahana ki a koutou, nā memo te hapori ko taimai, SPCA. So a warm welcome into this whare te Māria Nui. Nō reira nau mai, haere mai. Anei he karakia. Tui runga, tui raro, tui roto, tui waho, tui te hira tangata, karongo te ao, karongo te pō. Nau mai te ihi, te wihi, te mana, te tapu. Paupau ki roto ki a mātou mō tēnei ata. Ko ia rā e rongo whakiriraki ki runga, turuturu whakamaua ki a tīna. Haumi e, hui e, taiki.
Thank you, Councillor Rolleston. I now call for apologies. We will...
Baker's going to be a little bit late.
So we'll accept lateness from Councillor Baker. Councillor Kurak happy to move. Councillor Schuler seconding. All those in favour? Aye. We now move to the public forum. We have two separate speakers this morning. First up, speaking to fireworks in our city is Dr. Jessica Walker and Ms. Frankie Hutchings. Please welcome to the table. Thank you. You have 5 minutes, including questions. The floor is yours.
Kia ora everybody, I'm Frankie. I'm a local barber in town and in my spare time I work with rescue horses. I've been volunteering with animal rescues for over 20 years. I want to share the realities that our volunteers face and the impact on animals in our community. I've spent many nights at animal shelters trying to keep animals calm and prevent injuries. It is horrendous. These animals are already scared and stressed, and this causes so much trauma. It can be really hard to rehome them. Thank you. I'm very nervous, sorry. We've had accidents with our rescue horses year after year. Night after night, our volunteers stand in paddocks trying to give them food. We give them a natural rescue remedy. We have tried playing fireworks over speakers and increasing the volume to get them used to the noises. Every year there are still incidents with horses going through fences. A couple of years ago, one of our beautiful mares had a steel waratah impaled into her chest and ripping her chest open. She survived. She'll never be ridden again. It was very, very traumatic for a horse who was already very traumatised, and it put a hell of a lot of pressure on the volunteers. Our time, cost, there's never enough money or resources in animal rescue as it is. These things just add to it. Last year, a 14-year-old horse called Remy became entangled in a fence after being spooked by fireworks. People had driven up her rural road at about 10:30 at night and started setting fireworks off. Donna, her owner, went out to check and tried to keep the horses calm. About 12 p.m, the fireworks stopped. She thought it was all good. Horses had settled down. She went back to bed. In the morning, she was woken up to a phone call from her neighbour. Remy had gone through a fence and pretty much ripped her foot right off. There was no saving her. Due to the extent of her injury, she had to be put down. I have photos. They are very confronting. I probably won't hold them up now because it is live streaming, but I am happy to share with councillors and pass them around after this meeting. A few words from Donna. I'm so sorry to send these. They are unbearable, but they speak of the impact of loss more than the words. She didn't deserve to die like that. She and I had many awesome adventures together, and then a few people having jollies with fireworks caused a death so brutal it's hard to comprehend. I still haven't brought any of my other horses back here, but have been working on removing all wire from the property at a crippling financial cost, but would rather that than see this again. People don't see the consequences of their actions when using fireworks. I personally live near a Sikh temple. Fireworks go off every year from mid-October through to January. Every night it's fine, and often till 4 o'clock in the morning. My house backs onto a beautiful reserve with big trees where we have tuis nesting. In the last 5 years I have found 2 dead tuis, as well as numerous other native birds on mornings after fireworks have been set off under those trees in that park. There is also a rest home in our area, and I spoke to the clinical manager the other day. They have a lot, it's a very trying time for them during fireworks season with dementia patients. They get up, they get very disorientated, there are more falls, there are a lot of impacts over the whole community. I'm not against public displays for fireworks. If we know when they will be set off and where we can manage animals, families, pets, old people, young people, etc. My request to the council today is to consider creating bylaws to prevent fireworks being used in public places, on the roads and in parks where it impacts our native birds and our animals. I would also consider you to look at having covenants for new subdivisions being built and making them a fireworks-free zone. I personally would move to one if that was available. I could take you down the rabbit hole I've fallen into researching air pollution caused by fireworks, but we'll be here for hours. I'll give you one fact. 8 minutes of playing with a sparkler is the equivalent of breathing a day's air pollutions and breaches safe levels. I can send anyone interested a link to a study conducted by Auckland University. It's an interesting and scary read. In conclusion, I'll leave you with some sheets to pass around with incident reports from NZ firework impact data and photographs of our rescue horse who was injured on a fence, and also photos of Remy who passed away. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. We'll make time for 1 or 2 questions. Anyone got questions?
Sorry, I'll pass over to Jess from SPCA to share her stats now.
I think we might have run out of time, have we?
We've run over a wee bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
It's all right.
Do you have time if I was just to make a couple of points around how this...
Two brief statements will be fine.
All right, thank you. So I just wanted to comment on the fact that it can be really challenging to find pathways for restricting the use, the private use and sale of fireworks within your local area. At the moment, we know that there's not a lot of buy-in at national government level. However, you'll all be aware that the National Party has, New Zealand First has recently put a bill into the biscuit tin. We're obviously going into an election year. This is not an agenda item at the moment for the current government. We're also aware that it's, as I said, quite hard through local government. But what I would just like to make the point of while we're here is that at the moment I understand that you have a bylaw open for consultation, and that's your street use and public places bylaw. That could be a pathway for looking to restrict the use of fireworks in public places. And that's probably something that could be considered. We'll certainly be putting in a submission around that. You also have a pathway through Local Government New Zealand. In 2019, Local Government New Zealand passed a remit to lobby central government. That was quite a few years ago now. I suggest that it's time to reconsider that and have a look whether 2026 is the year to put another remit forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 1 question from anybody? Councillor Crowther.
I'd just trying to understand, yeah, thank you very much for sharing that, and I agree the government level is where the action is, and if National Act, Labor, you know, two of those parties, that could be a game changer. But in terms of what your request is, just to clarify, do you think more of the problem is coming from the public space realm, or more from people setting it off on private space, which then obviously can land in the public realm? Because that's my understanding of it, you know, but happy to be informed on this.
People are using it, they are setting them off in public spaces, so that's happening. Frankie, I know, has got some information about what we've just seen this year in Tauranga City. Do you want to talk to what you've got there?
No, we might just leave it there. Thank you very, very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
There's obviously quite a passionate and emotive subject, but thank you very much for your time.
No worries.
I now invite our second public forum speaker this morning, Michael Wenzel, speaking to chip sealing Phillips Drive, Taureka Ward. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for letting me speak today. I'm speaking on behalf of Oropi Downs community. We have been notified, it was probably last Wednesday night, Thursday morning, that our beautiful road, which was for 20 years asphalt, or 24 actually in some sections, that we will be getting chip seal starting planned tomorrow. My wife and I, we received this letter and we had a look through and we thought, how is this possible? And let's have a little chat about this. And we decided to engage with our community and have a talk to some neighbors. While this was progressing, obviously nothing from this here today was really planned. We decided then, we got straight away a good feedback from everyone sharing our opinion that they're absolutely upset about it and that they can't understand how a road is for 24 years there. They lived there for 20 years. They moved in there when they were 30. They're now 55. They're used to this asphalt road, and once of a sudden it should become chip seal. I know obviously this is a big decision for this is mainly cost. However, we have not been engaged in any communication with this. We clearly didn't know about it. The barcode on top of the road when you go into the street, that didn't work. I was then more or less, after talking to 4 or 5 people, sharing our opinion, I thought, okay, let's continue this, and I pretty much walked from door to door. First time I ever done this. And we started collecting signatures, and pretty much 95% in our road are absolutely against it, cannot understand it. The letter was not really clear what's actually happening. Some people didn't understand what the different surfaces, what does it mean. So the more information they're organized for themselves and the more conversation was around this, the more people actually don't want this. Obviously, there's some more problems in town currently with communities having the same issues. There is Bethlehem, Poiki, Paispa, Sapphire Drive, Bradley Avenue. So in one way, it's good to see that we're not the only ones. What we're trying to do is we try to find a solution together with the council. The 4 days was clearly not enough. There's a suggestion to fund this privately in the road. I spoke to nearly everyone in the road, and even though I got a strong support and we've collected over 80 signatures, we had a special meeting in between of 24 hours. 50 people came and gathered up and had a conversation about this with heaps of points I've shared with the council. I had constructive conversation with the council so far, which I appreciate. So there's definitely an ear about this and the idea that something has to change in that regard. We're not the only ones. So we hope we can contribute to bringing this in a different level of understanding for the public and for us. Even I understand NZTA is funding 51% of this, which forces us at first to go in this direction of not considering anything else than chip seal. However, I think Tauranga has also a great future, and what we've done the last 3 or 4 years, I live here since 10 years, is amazing, and I think the next 5 years is going to be even more amazing. I think we should have amazing roads connecting all those big projects we have. I don't think we need to start a debate what's better, chip seal or asphalt. I know we have a big report with 32 pages. I'm not here to debate this report. I'm not a road specialist, even though I know a little bit more about road now than 4 days ago. I also read lots. I've received a letter this morning from a lady in Paispa. Not in Paispa, in Papamoa. She lives there for 20 years. Her road was done 8 months ago, and she's extremely unhappy. She has contacted the council on various times to get rid of those chips. There's chips still everywhere. Is this a construction issue, or is this normally the case? Who knows? But I can tell you there's more and more voices coming up that they are very concerned before the asphalt goes down, and they're even more concerned and monitoring this right now after the asphalt has been going down with all these tar bleeds, with the chip stones everywhere. The council has to be, I assume, the letters and the phone calls to repair those sections going up. And hopefully we together can find a solution. Obviously, to find a solution, we need a little bit more time. We had 4 working days. I think I got a great feedback. And the people of Phillips Drive and Oropi Downs, they have asked me to represent them here today and to, for now, stop this, that we have a little bit of time to think about what can we do which works for everyone. If this, I obviously can't speak for everyone on that behalf, if this is an increase in specific suburbs in areas over a period of 20, 30 years, which then to be anything between $200 or $400, I think something like this in a letter, no one would have a problem with that, I assume. Or if it's something more short term, I'm pretty sure there is a solution, and hopefully people can be happy. And everyone is very precious about their homes. Our suburb is a lovely suburb, so we have I forgot to mention one thing actually. We have no walking paths, so when we bring our kids in the morning to the bus, we have to walk on the road. We're in a rural area, so the post boxes are, we can't literally walk on the berm as well because you have to walk around like that. We have a couple of steep hills in there. So our kids go there with we have 3 cul-de-sacs. You can only access the road from one way. Our kids go there with their scooters. The moms go with the prams. Elderly people go for a run there. They're a bit scared of the gypsies when they go up and down the hills. That's all little details. But for the people living there, it means a lot.
Can you wind up, please?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Actually, I could go forever, but okay. I think I got the message through. Yeah. So.
Question from the Mayor.
Thank you, Michael. Firstly, thank you for advocating for your community and coming here today. I know it's not always easy to present in front of the council, but also, thank you for your respectful communication over the last few days. It's been great to work with you, and obviously, trying to find a solution here. My question is, you sort of touched on it, but do you think there's, I think I've explained to you around the financial pressures, and this is still a good solution for our roads, but do you think the community would be in a position to contribute for an asphalt surface if that was a requirement?
We had a little bit of question about this, and obviously there's on a short time like this, and they're feeling a little bit surprised in the situation. The acceptance to help financially is divided to a degree that some people are very open to it, probably in 3 groups. Some people need to understand more about it, and something a bit more official, and obviously there has to be a little bit of conversation that people understand it more, what it is and what the financial aspects involve. If that's probably contributed over a longer period of time, that it's not going to go absolutely crazy in the wallet, like for example, if I can't knock on the doors and say, can you contribute $7,000 now, tomorrow we need to do your asphalt, that might be a bit harsh, because obviously they have an obligation to the thought that they have been contributing for this since the last 20 years, and their belief that sort of was in the budget already. When the developer made these roads and it was required to do asphalt, automatically you will think, okay, we replace like for like, we are 30 years later, we want better roads, we want to involve as a community and as a city. But to answer your question, I think there's definitely an acceptance to talk around this, what the boundaries are, and how long we get time to pay this off, and if it's a citywide issue, obviously, and we have to look into other areas too, and we go specifically to suburbs, I don't know, but I know one thing, that they want to keep their street nice, and if there's a clear communication and they feel that they had been heard and they understand all the risk and the financial burdens with it, there's definitely an openness. And I know also that there's new surfaces in test to do something a bit better what we have at the moment in terms of financial aspects, we would be definitely open to look into this as well and to say, okay, Phillips Drive is a unique road. Maybe it's worthwhile to trial a section there and monitor this for a while. This helps us maybe to get a totally different idea in terms of roadings to start with Phillips Drive or any other road, which helps us then. I think it's really a future problem, and if we put chip seal everywhere and we have this discussion in 10 years, that's not going to help, but this might be an opportunity to bring this all into a different thought, and hopefully other people see it like that as well here.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for your time today.
Okay, pleasure. Thanks for your time.
Thank you to our public forum speakers. We now move on to item 4, acceptance of late items. We have one late item, item 9.9, chip seal over asphalt in the 25-26 reseal program. This is a late addition due to the material hadn't been completed being written before the agenda went public. And it is as a response to an item on last Tuesday's council meeting. The reason we're not holding it over to the next City Futures meeting is that's next year, and this is a very time-sensitive subject. So we'll have a report delivered, 9.9 chip seal. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Kurak, Councillor Morris. All those in favour? Aye. That item is added. Thank you. Confidential business being transferred into the open. Is there any? No, thank you. Change to the order of business. I will just state that depending on how the meeting goes today, some items may move depending on, we've got staff and the Mayor have appointments, so we may move items around to accommodate them. But at this stage, we'll attempt to stick to the order. Confirmation of minutes. Minutes of the City Future meeting held on the 14th of October. Does anyone have any issues with those minutes? No, I'm happy to move that we accept those minutes. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Taylor, a seconder. All those in favour? Aye. Against? It is accepted. Thank you. Declarations of conflict of interest. Does anyone wish to declare a conflict? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to note my interest as a board member of the Environmental Protection Agency. There are a couple of updates on the fast track applications. We, as the Environmental Protection Agency, we're only the Secretariat. We don't make any decisions, but I just want it noted for the minutes.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Any other conflicts? Councillor Morris.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I declare an interest in regard to recommendation 2A, which is in resolution B3 of the use of council land policy. I'll exclude myself for the voting on that particular resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your declaration, Councillor Morris. Any more? No. Do I need to move it? Just accept. No, yeah. Thank you very much. We now move to item 9, business. Item 9.1, levels of service policy review, open space, active reserves and public toilets. Presenters today are Ross, Vicky and Reneke. Is she online? Reneke is online. Is Reneke going to open this, or are we going to go to Ross?
I am online, but the team have got it. I'm here in case they need me.
The floor is yours, Ross.
Actually, Vicky's going to give a short introduction.
Tēnā koutou katoa. So here today talking about several of our policies related to open space provision. So you may remember we briefed the committee in September on these policies. So it's to do with what is on our open space, what you can expect in your local park, your suburban park. Do you get play? Do you get shade? Do you get barbecues? What do you get? And so our policies are quite dated, as you may remember, and so we're looking to update these to better match our community expectations and what's reasonable to expect today. And obviously thinking forward to the future as well in terms of as the city intensifies, as our climate changes, what do we need to be preparing for? So we've been able to draw from a wealth of existing engagement material to kind of work up a number of things that the community may want on open spaces standard, but we feel that we're lacking a little bit of information on some of the distribution amounts or the trade-offs that people might like, and so we're proposing a little bit of qualitative research in order to fill those knowledge gaps to help us develop a recommended policy option to bring back. We're also planning in parallel to reach out to some stakeholder groups as well to help inform those kind of recommended policy options, and then coming back to you next year, as I said, with developed policy options, which will include things like financial costings, implications for development contributions, our recommendation about what's appropriate in terms of the formal consultation, whether that's a special consultative procedure or needing to be bundled in with the long-term plan as well. So just today, just checking in, getting any feedback in terms of this next step, this piece of research to just inform that policy development, and then looking to come back to you in the new year.
Are we going to take it as read and now open for questions? Excellent. Questions, Councillor Taylor.
I noticed in the resolution it talks about further targeted consultation, focus groups, that sort of thing. Can you give us some idea of who you'll be talking to?
So the idea is to try and get a bit of a cross-section of the community. So given focus groups are a qualitative research method, it does need to be small. So we are not going to get a statistically representative group, but we are trying to hopefully reflect the diversity of the population of Tauranga to kind of give us a bit of insight into the why some people might think particular things or some of the, I guess, preferences. And so we're looking to engage a group to help us recruit and facilitate that session, and then as staff we'll work through the analysis of what comes out of it. But in terms of the direction, we're asking for a range, a cross-section of age, ethnicity, location, housing typology, so people living in more dense housing as well as current single density. Yeah.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you. I'm assuming this will help inform future development contributions going forward in the city if there's a change to the level of service or within certain areas different requirements. My question is, within these focus groups and within the wider consultation before it comes back to us, are you going to give the stakeholders an idea of what a per house or per unit increase in cost may be in order to achieve a higher level of service? Because when I get asked if I want something, I always say yes, never look a gift horse in the mouth. But if I'm then asked to pay for it, I may have a slightly different view.
Yeah, and it's a little tricky at the moment just because we don't have that kind of fully worked up policy option, so therefore we can say things like, oh, we need an extra piece of land in order to do this. But we do have kind of indicative costs for some of the things in terms of like a small playground costs $300,000 to $400,000 and a larger playground costs. So it depends a little bit, like if everyone wants everything everywhere, then obviously you're going to have big land acquisition costs that may not be involved, but it's more that kind of, would you rather have, yeah.
Deputy Mayor, do you have a question?
Yes. So I guess this is just a little bit further to both Councillor Taylor and Councillor Morris. These are, I think, really great things to consult on, but we need to get it right. So when you talked about using somebody to help with the first stages of who we're talking to, is that consultants or is that internal?
Yeah, it's consultants. So we looked at whether we could do it internally using our database that we hold in terms of, people who've signed up to be contacted about council engagements, and just given the focus group dynamic and the privacy statement, it just wasn't really appropriate. So we're looking to get a consultant to reach out through a database that they hold, find the people that we're asking for and organise the groups and facilitate, and then all the analysis of what comes out of the group will be done in-house.
And so our, number one, we've got a rating database. Number two, we had a survey when we looked at the Memorial Aquatic Centre and we got 5,000 responses. So that's not, you're thinking that's not sufficient to utilise?
We've asked and we've advised that the privacy aspects weren't covered, but I can double check in terms of the memorial pool if there was anything different that we asked in terms of that. We were looking in particular around the Kōrero Mai database.
And so we did a study, and I always forget what it's called, in 2023 that looked at, that was more than the census.
Vital updates?
That's the one. So are we utilising, because that I understand was a very big and quite a valuable piece of work. Is that the basis of some of our engagement?
So definitely in terms of the diversity of our community, that obviously shows the full span of different types of demographic groups in Tauranga, and there were also some questions about open space in there which we've used to inform that kind of long list of activities and functions. But in terms of some of the more questions about why people want particular things, how are they getting to places, are they happy to bundle the kids in the car to get somewhere, or do they go down with their scooters and it matters that it's within a certain distance? It's more those kind of granular aspects that we just want a little bit more insight in on.
Supplementary, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So I did have that question because we know quite a lot of people, kids bus to school or get driven to school. So when we look at what we need in an area, do we say, well, if parents are comfortable that they're taking their kids out of zone to go to another school, then they're actually comfortable to go out of zone to a park or a sports field or a pool? Is that all taken into account?
That's what we're trying to unpack, the preference around, is it acceptable for some people to travel further, and if so, what's, the characteristics, and so that way when you guys come to decide on a policy option, you can be informed that, if you offer something at this distance, it means that these people are likely to participate, but there might be barriers for this person and this person. So it's to help inform the advice we give you on a policy option, because there will be trade-offs obviously in terms of cost and what you provide, and so just making sure that you're informed in terms of what does that mean for what that might mean for different parts of the community in terms of their use of or enjoyment of different facilities.
Councillor Schuler.
Thanks very much, guys. Just on a couple of questions, if that's all right, Chair. Just on 11, talking about, I suppose, the issues through the review, and just the third part there about, I suppose, the older ones are not really giving us those quantifiable measures. Just in terms of on that, you just sort of see, what are the changes that'll going forward that's going to help us make the right decisions, or will that come out of the process?
So I think we're trying to be a bit more specific about the types of functions and activities people can expect. So, for example, at the moment on a suburban open space, there's an optional skate park, and so that's not very clear about whether or not you can expect one or not. It may be there, it might not. And so we're just trying to work through a more specific kind of expectation or standard, so that way both the community, developers, staff know what's expected.
Second one, and it's obvious we're a city with a limited area overall, and you talk about the competition between spaces for the use of the land, and then obviously there's competition for land full stop. So just we've just recently, and it'll plug out to the turf for the Tauranga Football Association in Anataki just opened that, which I think personally is an amazing asset and level of service for the community. I'm assuming the use of turf across some of these fields is something that will become part of the longer term planning for the city.
Yeah, the short answer to that is yes. For two reasons. One, because you can use them more, and two, because they take up less land. But that obviously needs to be balanced with the cost. As far as the open space level of service policy is concerned, as it applies to active reserves, we're really just trying to get a sort of general understanding of the land requirements associated with that. Where there are opportunities to minimise those, particularly where we're in a situation where we may need to acquire new land. It's always useful to try and do that. We need to understand that in the round, though.
Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm seeing potential devil in the detail depending on how the engagement goes. And I'm just wondering, are you looking at presenting the three options or doing sort of like I don't know what the technical term is for research, where you ask them certain questions and then you keep cross-correlating it. So for instance, will you sort of ask, someone who wants natural play to be accessible or canopy cover, they might be going towards the nature focus one, but will they get plenty of opportunity to say they also want artificial shade in parks, and will vice versa, the other ones also get to say they want natural play close by, because some of these engagement processes shepherd you in a direction. I'm wondering how you're planning to kind of open it fully to get all the views.
And the examples are a little bit exaggerated, I guess, to show that distinction. And so it's more as a tool for engagement, so to prompt people and to try and get a bit more organic answers. So just kind of saying, of this option, what features stand out to you and why? And, if you had to choose between these two options, what would be your preference? Why is that? Because what we're after is the why, not necessarily the we want to know why is that one drawing to you? Is it because, the environment's really important to me and I love seeing, the native bird life when I go on a walk or something like that. So we want to know the underlying preference, because it might be that we can deliver that preference in a different way. So just trying to get some of those insights about what people are really valuing.
Just a quick follow. My comment would be then that it'd be helpful to present it back very qualitatively without worrying about the quantitative stuff, because the quantitative could be very misleading in that context.
Arthur Flintoff.
Many of the reserves, as with most of the land around here in Tauranga, have cultural significance at Tangata Whenua. My question is, will you continue to engage with Tangata Whenua and Te Rangapu in the design of this policy to capture also the narratives and stories associated with a lot of these reserves?
So in terms of some of the functions and activities, one of the ones is around that culture and storytelling. And the other thing we heard from our Te Rangapu group and also the policy subcommittee was around designing for a range of different living types, I guess, and in particular engaging with the Whai Oranga Trust in terms of some of the support that they offer to people and what might be needed there. Definitely we're keeping connected in with the policy subcommittee on this one. The other aspect where culture and storytelling comes in is the actual design process. So this policy is around distributing the resources and the land, and then there's also that translation through design, which is very much more in the Spaces and Places design team in terms of when something's up for renewal or a project, engaging with mana whenua, making sure that those stories are incorporated. Ross might be able to elaborate.
No, not too much to add to that. Obviously, the manifestation of those cultural narratives has a cost attached to them, mahi toi and similar features. So we need to get a reasonable understanding of that to then inform policy decisions. But certainly when it comes to the design and delivery of new features and new spaces that we take forward, we do that in careful consultation with our mana whenua partners.
Councillor Rolleston.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to some of the feedback, I think, from Te Rangapu, it's around storytelling, but there's a lot of Māori land that's open space. And I think paragraph 24, I think you were sort of alluding to how you might work with those groups. So while we've got our council ones, and great to tell our stories, but they've got their own whenua that are contributing to that open space. I guess my question is, have we thought about how we might recognise private contributions towards public community spaces? Because it's a good thing, and I think that will continue, but it's actually I guess it's a koha, but how might we acknowledge that? Have we thought about how we might do that?
Yeah, and this is kind of similar to that theme that came up just around schools through the play work around, you know, how does other provision of some of the things that our community want fit in with council's role. And so it's definitely something the team are thinking about and working through. I guess we're having a good sense of what types of things you want the community to have access to and in what distance and what scale. It helps you potentially look at opportunities where someone else might deliver that thing and it still meets your expectations. So I think this step of trying to really understand what is it that is our offering for the community helps us then potentially partner with others to make sure that that's achieved.
Yeah, just to add to that, obviously private open space, or let's say non-council open space, provides really important functions for the city already, right? Whether that's play spaces, stormwater management, ecological corridors and the like. Absolutely, we want to and are working with Māori entities of one form or another. For example, we're at a very constructive hui recently with Rangatawa about opportunities for community accessible play and recreational improvements in the space that they're responsible by the marae there. So yeah, absolutely.
Probably my only steer in this year would be on our large open grassed areas, we change or improve our mowing to include pre-mowed cricket wickets, softball diamonds, areas for volleyball courts. I've had several requests from the Tauriko and the Lakes residents around just mowing a few areas shorter so they can play sports on their open grassed area, because at the moment, given the spring flush, it's only any good for those during one day of the week, because after 2 days of grass is too long. Deputy Mayor, that's the last question.
I've got two, then I'm going to sneak in. The first one, so just on point 34, financial considerations, you've got a cost there of 15,000. We did say when we put financial considerations, it is meant to include staff time. Please have that going forward. But so that 15 covers the consultants that you're going to be using and the hosting of the focus groups.
We're planning to use our venues, yes, and staff time. It will be about 2 to 3 weeks of policy team time, which we have allocated for kind of our larger policy process for this pre-engagement phase. So sometimes we do community surveys and we have to analyse those. In this case, it's just a different thing to analyse, I guess.
It would just be really good to have that in the report next time, please. But more importantly, just in terms of, in this, we've got it in a few of the policy and a bit of the information we've got, we seem to be intending, expectation is that we're going to be having smaller sections and more one bedroom apartments, and we're looking for densification, but that's actually not happening in what we're seeing in terms of building consents. Even in this case, when we're looking at options, we've just had somebody talk from Phillips Drive and Oropi, and I just had a Google map of those very large properties and a number of swimming pools and playgrounds within their own properties. how do we distinguish between what an area around Merivale Community Centre needs, what an area like a densified, so we've got a 10-storey residential needs versus very large properties? Where does that come into play, and how are we doing it? Are we providing far more when the situation requires it?
So when we start to develop up policy options, there will be potentially a look at whether we provide different depending on density. So Auckland and Hamilton have that in terms of their zoned high density areas. They provide closer access to certain functions. And so as we get to the policy option stage, that will be something we consider. It can be just a little tricky around what's zoned for versus what actually gets developed. And so we're just working through how we might be able to best, I guess, recognise the areas that are developing quicker. Because if you look at what's zoned for high density in the city plan at the moment, they're not necessarily highly dense yet. And so how do you make sure that, you know, you're actually providing for density, not planned density, I guess.
And I've got a supplementary. How I also read that, not in your reports, but that it's actually far harder to engage people in lower demographic areas. So how are we going to have specific engagement with, particularly now we've got with 2 community centres? Could that be something we make sure we do find out? And we also, just in terms of the homeless report we've had this week, we've got a lot of people in overcrowded houses. Those are the sort of people they won't be landlords, but how do we make sure we're engaging with them to find out what they need?
So we are asking in terms of the consultant for them to show that they've got an approach for accessing hard-to-reach groups through the procurement. So we are hoping to provide that diversity, but we also recognise that it can be difficult to engage those groups, and so we are using our community development team who have relationships into that area to kind of do the stakeholder side in terms of that parallel feedback. So hopefully we will get a diversity, but we do have that kind of backup channel in terms of our community development team and their relationship into the social sector.
Thank you very much, staff. Thank you for your well-answered questions. We now have a motion. I'm calling for... Good morning, Councillor Baker. Happy to move the motion? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Schuller, second. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Baker?
Yeah, just briefly. Morena tātou, apologies for being late. This is pretty straightforward. It's consolidation and consultation. Staff have been given a good steer on the type of engagement that we want to see and the feedback we want to get back. So looking forward to receiving that report.
Councillor Shaw, do you wish to speak? No. The motion is that the City Futures Committee A receives a report level of service policy review, open space, active reserves and public toilets, and B notes that further targeted engagement will inform the development of the recommended policy options to be provided to the committee in early mid-2026. All in favour? Aye. No. Bit late. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Well, I didn't actually see your hand up. Item 9.2, use of council land policy and review, issues and options. Welcome back, Ross. Sandy and Renica still online. Who's leading this, Ross?
I'm just the backup band again. Sandy's going to take us through.
Welcome, Sandy.
Morena tātou. So I'll just provide a really brief outline of the report and then open up for questions. So the use of council land policy was adopted in December 2022, and it was an amalgamation of 10 previous council policies, all related to the use and activity on council land. And the intention for the policy was to provide an overarching framework for decision-making on how the council manages activities and use on council-owned and administered land. And it sets out the activities that can take place on council land, as well as the types of approvals that are required. So, for example, whether you need a booking, a licence to occupy, a lease, etc. When the policy was adopted, there was a resolution that we review it in 3 years, and that's a review that we're undertaking now. So it's really a check-in to see how is the policy working, are there any improvements that we can make to it. In the process of reviewing the policy, we spoke to all the relevant business units who use and implement the policy, as well as key stakeholders, including those who have an interest in the way that council manages the use of public land, as well as those who have had a formal approval to use council land, either through a booking or permit or licence to occupy, etc. And the general feedback indicated that the policy is generally working quite well, and the recommendations are relatively minor amendments, including some clarifications to existing provisions in the policy, which are outlined in this report. So we'll just take the rest of the report as read and happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Do I have any questions? None. I've got one. 9.2, paragraph 34, page 55. I was just in relation to the joint agreements that we have with Western Bay in relation to Tech Park, and what does oversee operation of the park actually mean in the context of Tauranga City Council? Paragraph 34, page 55 on.
So what it means in practice is that Western Bay Council manages the parks, and we make a financial contribution towards that management of the park, albeit that there is an agreement around that, and there are check-ins around the management approach.
Lots of information in the press around the motorsport park proposal, and yet we've seen nothing across this table, and it's been talked about at length, and yet we've had nothing come across or had a visit or a discussion with the Western Bay Council around. I'm just wondering how far down the road does something go in relation to Tech Park before it comes to this committee or council?
I can respond to that a bit further if you'd like. So as Ross said, we do make a financial contribution. We meet regularly with Western Bay and have ongoing operational conversations with them, and agree in principle on the way that things are happening. With regard to Thunder Ridge, and also there's a blue light proposal for there's actually a briefing coming to council next week. So Western Bay of Plenty, along with Chet and Blue Light, are coming next Thursday, I think, Tuesday, to take you through the proposal so far. I think it would be fair to say that we probably should have brought Thunder Ridge to you before we have, and we've had conversations about how we get ahead of things like that moving forward to make sure that our council is up to date as Western Bay is at the same time.
Thank you very much, Alison. Deputy Mayor and then Arthur Flintoff.
Thank you. Just on page 47, there was, I'll find it again now. The policy was adopted in 2022 and it was to be reviewed 3 years later. Could we just get that, whatever the report that went to the commissioners, backing that up? Because I didn't quite understand. Was there anything that we should be reading there that they said why it should be reviewed again in 3 years?
Nothing specific in the report, but we did provide that yesterday. The deliberations report that went to the commissioners in December.
Oh, is it? We've got it by email, have we? Okay, sorry, I haven't got that.
Sorry, it's been added as an item in Stella as part of the information provided with the agenda.
Okay, but I just haven't got to emails overnight, sorry. I've been busy. Page 49. I guess on table 1, removing the specific requirement for a permit or licence, and the advantages is enables a more flexible approach for staff to determine which type of approval is appropriate for any type of activity. And I guess we are known as a city council, we are bureaucratic. We are hearing that we do tend to sort of put roadblocks up for, rather than enabling things, we tend to put rules in place. So as members of the group that's going to be doing this, when you're enabled to have a flexible approach to determine the type of approval, are you going to be doing that proactively or in a constrained way? It just worries me that that's an allowance for bureaucracy, bureaucrats to say, no, this is the rules, we're trying to be enabling. This is suggesting it's enabling, but bureaucrats tend not to be. I'm asking whether my opinion needs to change. Thanks, Ross.
I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I am by nature kind of laissez-faire and enabling, which is good and bad, but I have a team of people who are really good at balancing our regulatory responsibilities, legislative responsibilities, and the balance between, I guess, individual needs and the overall public good. Ultimately, that's your responsibility as well. We try and be as enabling as we can, and I think we don't want to have to put licenses in place where we don't need to. We're really busy as it is, and if a simple approval is the way to go, then we'll use that.
Thank you, and I think that's. Would you like to also comment?
I was just going to add, it does make it more enabling, because right now it does say specifically for certain activities you need a permit or license, which goes through a longer process, but the approval means that it could be just a booking or just some sort of council approval.
So then just clarify that scheduled maintenance repairs is prioritised over bookings. Is that on the basis that people know well ahead when they are happening, rather than, oh no, that's regular maintenance and therefore your booking you've had for 6 months is dropped?
No, it's more that it's for active reserves. This is more that that you've got those shoulder seasons between winter and summer sports, and the codes are pushing into those shoulder seasons because they want to provide more cricket or football or rugby or whatever it is. But we obviously need to maintain and improve the quality of the surface, cut it for cricket wickets, etc. We have a narrow window in which that happens. It's just about us saying we'll prioritise doing that over taking bookings where we need to. Yeah.
Arthur Flintoff.
The 2022 level service decision did not explicitly embed Te Ao Māori, so this review is an opportunity to correct that. I have two questions. The first one, the Te Ao Māori section is very brief given the significance of land to tangata whenua. Can you outline how Te Tiriti obligations, our commitments to Te Ao Māori, have been analysed for this policy, and whether we should strengthen the Te Ao Māori section before consultation?
So one of the purposes of the policy does say to give effect to the principles in Te Tiriti, and I guess that's given effect to through two main policy principles. One is the cultural significance one, and which informs the type of activities or the outcomes we want to achieve when we enable activities on council land. And then the other one is around partnership. So basically it states that any use of council land will acknowledge the historical and cultural significance of a site, and will work in partnership with mana whenua in managing land for that purpose. And we've also included some strengthening provisions of the policy that clearly state that consideration of relevant iwi and hapu management plans are also required and considered in the decision-making process.
My second question actually has to do with those iwi hapu management plans. How are they considered? What does that mean in practice? And if an activity is inconsistent with such a plan, will that be grounds to decline or amend an approval? In other words, what weight will the hapu iwi management plans carry?
So we take account of those in any approval decisions that we make, but we also, generally there are already mechanisms in place, particularly if it's a longer term use of the land through a license or a lease, whereby we have to consult with and take account of iwi and hapu interests in the land and those arrangements in particular.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. I'm referring to Table 7, and it's sort of a question, sort of a challenge to the recommendation there. I think we've got this one slightly wrong. I think it's probably framed incorrectly in that it's not so much about competition. This is the one that talks about temporary businesses that may be competing in an area. That's where the competition things come in. I see it more about equity and making sure that everyone's paying their fair share, and that you have people that are paying rates and are paying leases on fixed property, and they're often up against people that are there for the weekend, picking the eyes out of the business. So I challenge that one. I think we should be having a bigger look at someone coming in temporarily. How do they actually contribute to the city, or are they just there as an opportunist for a certain amount of time? I think we've got to start looking at our businesses and how much they offer the city and how committed they are. They often mortgage their houses to do that sort of thing. And I think we've got to have to be cognizant that these other people probably don't have any commitment at all. They could be gone tomorrow. So we shouldn't offer them the cherries, if you like, at the expense of our other businesses. So you might call it competition. I see it as equity and making sure that everyone's paying their fair share. So there's a question in there somewhere about whether we've got this right or wrong.
I think there's a couple of different aspects to it. One is, what is the land that a temporary commercial activity is taking place on or is asking to take place on? Is that a reserve, and is the activity consistent with the reserves management plan for that reserve? And council has the opportunity to give direction in that respect. The other aspect I think that you're alluding to is fairness around the value of the land. And that's something that we can potentially consider through changes to user fees and charges policies. We've got a workshop on Thursday where we can have that discussion. I'm not entirely sure of how far you're trying to push in one direction or another, so it's hard to comment absolutely around that.
I guess I'm trying to question the status quo, which is the option that we've had put forward. So when we get to discussing this further and potentially voting, item 11, I think it is, I'll be asking for that to be taken separately.
I guess it's also the scope of this policy. So it does say in the policies that anything related to fees and charges will be dealt through separate, user fees and charges process. And the scope of this policy is to really, how do we consider the activities, which is why we don't have anything around the actual charging of, equity around charging in this policy or in the issues and options report.
I guess it's the attitude that we have when we go in and we start talking about the fees. Like, I think we should be a little bit protective of those that are here permanently and that are paying the piper, if you like, as over ones that come in temporarily.
Councillor Baker was next in line there.
Good question. Rod, I support where you were going with that. My question was on point 6 around BVL in particular, probably just wanting a bit more understanding around I'm probably a bit confused on the languaging, so just help me make sense of what we're saying, particularly in point 35. The directed through council resolution rather than being informed. So organisations, their operations, including their lease terms, are directed through council resolution rather than informed by the lease provision in this policy. And the advantage we're stating in the table there is that because they've got their own decision-making body and it's consistent with practice, we've heard quite often that the community aren't particularly happy with BVL in practice and that relationship between them as an organisation operationally and community. We're wanting to address this we're tidying up this policy, which is cool, but how are they being consistent or us harmonising our respective approaches to create consistency across the board?
So in terms of the policy, the only provisions that currently technically should apply to BVL are around their leases. So the terms of the leases, which currently in the policy it says maximum 33 years, 2-year termination clause, etc. So that's the extent of what would apply to BVL. I guess the operations is then slightly different, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, the option is yours, I guess, to some degree, in that you could retain this policy as providing that blanket application, including bay venues. I think the reason that we've excluded it is both because there are existing mechanisms in place for you as a council to give direction to BVL as to what it does or doesn't do in the spaces that it manages on council's behalf, and the extent to which it engages in commercial or quasi-commercial activities. The letter of expectations process and the statement of intent from bay venues provides one mechanism. As Sandy's identified here, the leases that we have with bay venues also provide a mechanism through which we can enable or constrain activities that they undertake. I guess the policy recommendation is more one around simplicity of administration rather than trying to adjust the balance in terms of bay venues versus other entities.
Mayor?
Yeah, I guess just to Councillor Taylor's point, I think he's actually got a very good point, and I just wonder, I understand the user fees and charges perspective, but should we and can we, within this policy, put in some sort of competition effects? So, let's say there's a cafe on the side of a park that we don't let a coffee cart sit in the park, for example, where we sort of have some constraints to actually consider the effects of a business. Like obviously if the nearest cafe is 2k away, well then that's a different discussion. But if we've got a permanent business that is that is competing directly within a X amount, is that something we can consider in this?
You can certainly put some additional or more explicit terminology into the policy to that effect. In practice, already we do give consideration to those things, and I think the example you gave there is a really good one. Obviously, markets on reserves have been controversial for some groups for some time, and have kind of come back and forth at staff level and at council level over the years in the context of this policy. So yes, you could make some specific amendments. Did you want to add anything, Sandy?
Be quiet.
I guess when you're putting something around competition, it's we need to be careful not to be coming across as we are making decisions solely on the basis of protecting existing businesses, because there's the potential problems around being anti-competitive. So the recommendation is that we've got that diversity principle in the policy, which enables us to achieve effectively the same outcome, which is to try and diversify the offerings. But yeah, if we were to make a decision solely on competition aspects, then that would be potentially problematic legally.
Yeah, I probably don't agree with that. We're allowing our land to be used, so I think, you know, they're getting an advantage. I get we could do it through user fees. You know, we could charge them a similar rental to what, you know, and a sort of a take the rates and what it would cost them to lease the land as a commercial premises. We could do it that way. I don't think that's a great way of doing it, but you know, that's another option, I guess. So that it sort of prices in that. But you know, I think for us to say you can use our land for, you know, very little and compete with a business that's in the community paying rates and you know, and supporting our community ongoing, I feel is you know. But I take your point. Maybe there's the provisions already, you know, to allow that. But I think we just need to apply them.
Yeah, I had a couple of things. One of them is in regards to the airport. Is that including all the land that is owned potentially for that purpose, or just the land that is being utilised for that purpose? Does it include the existing commercial stuff in the neighbourhood? And if so, is there a statutory reason for that, or is it just that we want to be able to keep earning the revenue from it in that way?
Yeah, so it's existing leases at the airport, out in the airport. The reason being the previous legislation, which I can't remember what it's called, but it's in the report, did require airports to be operated commercially. I think there's some provisions now for local councils to not operate solely commercially. But yeah, so the airport operations are governed by different legislation than the Reserves Act, for example, and all the leases under the airport are not governed by the policy. So there's a separate piece of legislation.
But just to be clear, you're saying, so the commercial premise that, you know, significant one on that land that is owned for, you know, with the same purpose, that would be the same as the actual airport terminal and the runway and everything else. It'd all be treated as like it's all the same parcel of land for the purpose of this policy.
Yes.
Okay. And my second question was around like the comments that some of my colleagues have made around enabling. And we've got this situation where there is a shortfall in education facilities across the board, but including early childhood in places like Papamoa and indeed in some of the existing areas. And what's being proposed is to sort of, you know, contain what we allow on council land, with sort of the argument that there are reasons that could be detrimental if we widen that policy. So I'm not arguing with the rationale for not doing that on a case-by-case basis, but in terms of enabling, what would be the downside to enabling, for instance, the kindergartens as they've requested? And the same applies to, for instance, the maximum term of lease. We're not talking about forcing these leases to be longer. We're saying a maximum allowed for termination. Termination of the lease. Like, what's the potential pitfall with enabling it if the whole of the council understands that it needs to be applied judiciously? Because it seems very non-enabling what you're recommending here.
So with regard to kindergarten specifically, essentially at the moment we have one entity that has a number of leases across council land. There's nothing in the policy here that would stop those leases continuing, and actually we're going through a process now of renewing those leases for those kindergartens. I think essentially what we're trying to do is get a balance between opening up the door for a range of new early childhood education centres on council land, but on an individual case-by-case basis, there is still the opportunity there to enable that. For example, if a kindergarten, not-for-profit kindergarten, comes to us and says, is there a piece of land in Papamoa, for example, the option is still there to enable that. I guess it's just a presumption in one direction or the other is really the starting point.
I had a similar question to Councillor Crowther. It just seemed to me that the lease terms changes seem to be disabling, not enabling. And I think if 30% of the feedback you got objected to it, that's something that to take into account, but we can vote on that. But just on page 19 or point 19, when we talk about the fitness classes, so are they under the same basis of commercial? So if you charge for a fitness class, it's commercial, but if you don't charge, it's not commercial? That's a similar way we're doing to kindergartens and play centres? Is that all the same? I couldn't quite tell from the...
Yes, the distinction is if it's, I think there's a definition of commercial activities in the policy now, which, yeah, so if it falls within that definition of commercial activities, then it's considered a commercial fitness class.
But in the commercial facilities, it doesn't talk about fitness classes, but that's the same. Is that a service that's being offered, not traded goods? It's
in the what, sorry?
In the definition of what is commercial, you've listed three things. Does offering a fitness class fit into services provided? I can't.
Yes, so those were some examples, so it's not limited to those examples.
Okay, good. And then just on page 50, sorry, there's a lot in this policy, so forgive me. So on page 50, where we talk about a not-for-profit, so parent-led not-for-profit ECE, is that a actual definition? Nobody will get mistaken for knowing that that's what one is called, or is that just you have to go in and find out if they're a parent-led? Because I understand some parent-led do have one teacher that might be paid, or somebody. So I just don't want to get. You've got quite a difference in kindergartens versus parent-led. Is the definition really clear of which is which?
I think in terms of the actual application of it, I think it's clear enough. You know, there's three broad categories, I think, of early childhood education centre. The parent-led, so your play centres and kaingareo. Then you've got your not-for-profit kindergartens, and then private providers of early childhood education. Now, if a play centre also has one permanent or semi-permanent member of staff, that doesn't necessarily make it a kindergarten.
Okay. So I just, having been at the opening of the play centre at Arataki 6 months ago, that again would raise the same question. They did an awful lot of work to get that play centre up and running and built and funded. A termination of 2 years would be quite tough for them to think that could happen. So again, is that a sensible thing to be doing? And I'd say the same about some other community facilities on council land.
I guess if you want to make those termination clauses longer as standard, or based on the amount of capital investment that an entity is making, or some other factor, you can do that.
And the question would be, why would you change from what we've currently got? What's broken?
So the only change in there is to enable a termination clause of between 2 to 4 years rather than 2 years at the moment. That's the only change.
And that's the 7 years versus...
That's still an option in sexual circumstances, so that's still within the policy.
Can you turn your microphone on, please, Deputy Mayor?
So if we're only changing it to add the 2 to 4 years rather than 2, is that the only... There was a lot of words that I didn't read that when I read the recommendation. Is that all? Is that the only change?
Yes. Yes, it's just clarifying what the existing provisions are, which is maximum 33 years, including renewals, renewals of up to 10 years, every 10 years, 7 years for the termination clause in exceptional circumstances, and certain consideration of circumstances, and the termination clause from 2 years to 2 to 4 years, based on some of the feedback, what was really only from 2 stakeholders.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Shaw, this will be the last question.
Yeah, this sort of goes back to the discussions earlier around the commercial stuff. Just to get clarity, because I thought I had it clear, but I just want to. I think it's paragraph 38. So we can't, as a council, do anything that's going to create an anti-competitive environment. Is that right? That's protected. That's law. So that's not an area we should be looking to move into.
I think it's more that we have to give consideration to the Commerce Act in those situations. Remember, you do have... It's not like we just have free-for-all to start leasing reserve land for commercial entities. In most cases, that's not going to happen. Most commercial activities on council land or reserve land, and there aren't many, are either minor activities that are part of a broader purpose, for example, a cafe in a sports club or a surf club, or are temporary in nature, right? So the markets or the hospitality licenses are along Marine Parade.
And so just following that, Chair, last question to follow. So in terms of your recommendation, you know, as opposed to looking at it from a competitive view, say a more holistic view, so one is just ascertaining that everyone's paying a fair share, so what are the people paying? So rather than trying to come in with an anti-competitive lens, just look at making sure that, you know, the people that are doing stuff are paying a fair amount for it based on whatever criteria we put forward.
That is an option, but you could also, I guess, put some additional wording in that tips the balance perhaps in favour of existing bricks and mortar businesses, you know, greater constraints to those temporary activities.
Thank you, staff. That's the end of questions. Excuse me, Councillor Morris, you've declared a conflict. Are you happy to abstain?
Yeah, please, just on, I think it's B3.
So are you indicating you want it taken in parts then?
Please,
if we do have a motion. We have a recommendation. Is anyone happy to move? Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, not moving, but I'd like to change 11.11, and I've sent out a draft.
You'd like to make an amendment to...
No, it's not amending anything yet because we've got a motion.
Oh, so you'd like to change completely?
Yes.
B10.
Yep, and so my thinking on this is that we've got an instruction there that we talk about vibrancy, inclusivity and diversity on a commercial activity, and I disagree with Councillor Schuler that it's not anti-competitive. To me, it's making sure that they're operating on a similar footing. At the moment, we're probably being anti-competitive and that we're actually disadvantaging the bricks and mortar businesses by offering an easy entry for competing businesses. So I would say we're actually already being anti-competitive in how we go about this. So I've sent a slightly different wording, which puts the focus back on giving consideration to the bricks and mortar businesses prior to issuing these things. So happy to take comment on it. But
Can we just have the change on the screen so the rest of the table can read it?
Rather than replacing, is it possible just to add those words at the end of the current line?
The Deputy Mayor is happy to second this change. The Mayor.
So if everyone's happy that that changes, I'm happy to move the motion. I want the other one struck out though, so if someone else wants to amend it back to that, they can do that.
The Mayor seconded to add. This is to replace B10 with Councillor Taylor's 11. Councillor Couric has a question.
So if instead of deleting the current 11 and replacing it with the proposed wording, what would be the problem with just instead adding to the existing as it provides some guidance to staff or to the policy?
Because that explicitly says that we're going to retain the status quo, which is around vibrancy. It's got nothing to do with considering the other businesses. To me, it's the whole point of my change is that we're focusing on those that are paying rates already.
Can I just ask, so firstly to Councillor Taylor, I wasn't necessarily stating an opinion, I was trying to get clarity from staff, asking them, because that's the recommendation that's in front of us. And so then I understand there's a personal view, maybe you've already made your mind up, I haven't, but for me, they're not mutually exclusive. In terms of what Councillor Couric has said, we could have easily just moved and gone as we are and then made that adjustment to make sure that we're taking good consideration of existing paying business as well. So I would have been happy to move as they are and then accept your adjustment. So yeah, just an invitation for you to maybe ease back a bit and bring it in a positive manner.
Now I'm about to make a statement. What I'm going to propose, if the mover and the seconder are happy, that we put this, if it is lost, we can then vote to add it as an extra, and then we'll take the whole thing complete.
Sorry, can I just make, so really where I've got a problem, Councillor Schuler, is we're still referring to 7B, and if we go to 7B and look at it, it's very much against what I'm trying to do here.
I perfectly understand what Councillor Taylor's trying to achieve. The table in 7B is what Councillor Taylor is objecting to. So from Councillor Taylor's perspective, he wants to remove 7B from the recommendation. So, and I believe the Mayor's in support of that, is in support. So I'm happy to put this to the table to replace the existing 11 in the recommendation. If that is then lost, we will then look at adding it to the end. Although it is contradictory. It is quite contradictory, so I may have to remove it completely. So
I'm happy that...
Yeah. Mayor, are you happy to speak to this?
There's nothing to contradict because there hasn't been anything proposed.
In regards to the table contents in 7B.
Okay. maybe a pause and get some advice from the.
Time is 11 o'clock. We'll take a 5-minute break. See everyone back here at 11:06. welcome back everybody. Can we take our seats? There was a very eventful break. Another amendment has appeared, or variation, an alteration to a recommendation has appeared. Is that on the screen now? Are the mover and seconder happy to add that in, or we just happy to change the numbers? Councillor Crowd, are you just happy to change the 2 and the 4 to a 3 and a 6?
Yeah, I can explain why.
No, the current recommendation is amend the termination clause to a standard of 2 to 4 years. If we just amend that to Councillor Crowther's 3 and 6, is the table?
2 to 3 and extension to 6, isn't it? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, I'll have to explain. I can either go through.
But before we put it in, can you have a quick explanation, please, Councillor Crowther?
So my thinking through an LTP process, in my view.
Through the chair? So you're saying remove 7 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm suggesting it would be simpler and better and would still provide flexibility, and no doubt staff will still get lobbied, but it allows them to channel it to an appropriate decision-making process to ensure that this aligns with LTP decisions around use of public space.
Do you want to, for clarity?
No cost to council, but will allow them to...
In relation to one of the 2 proposals on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is, so just in terms of the Mount College pool, we are in the opposite situation. So Tauranga City Council is wanting to build a pool extension on Ministry of Education land under a lease. We had concerns that Ministry of Education were having too short a termination clause. If Ministry of Education had this clause in it, would that be acceptable to TCC?
Yes, it would, but the conversation with MOE is also around the reasons for termination. So there's another set of clauses in that conversation. But if you're just looking at a termination clause like this, then yes, that would have been a different conversation. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So as a table, are we...
Project, but you've limited the 7 down to 6. Is that actually what you're hearing from the community? Do they want that?
It's a very good point. It was sort of a compromise proposal to try to allow staff to have flexibility, but not to kind of make it too complex. I mean, I'd be happy to put it 3 to 7 years. I'd be happy for it not to align with the long-term plan if that's better, but I just saw benefits in it. I think the biggest issue I'm trying to address is that it needs to be longer, firstly, and secondly, that it shouldn't just be through exceptional circumstances through the CE, which will encourage those organisations to keep lobbying for those exceptional circumstances, in my view. So
I think
happy.
we've had a sufficient debate. I think the staff have got the general scope of where we're trying to go, and this is for consultation, and if it is thrown back at us by the community, we can amend through the consultation process something that the community actually want. So if we are in agreement, I believe Councillor Taylor is happy to move, and the Mayor is happy to second. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to it?
No, as you said, I think this is going out for public to have a say on. But I do think we need to take consideration. There's certainly businesses in the reserves at the moment that are doing a great job and they don't affect anybody else. And I'm thinking of Pippi's that you attend our tapu quite regularly. A great example of a good business that is great for the community. But I think we have to be mindful of those businesses, especially that are there all year round and are paying rates and working in the community.
Mayor, do you wish to speak? Anyone else? Deputy Mayor?
I'm just want to go back to that comment about BVL, that Councillor Baker also raised, that was in this one, Warren, wasn't it? Yep. Should we be managing the statement of expectations with BVL to tie in with this policy? Because I think it's we're consulting with them and that feedback comes in. I just think it's a little bit odd that we have a council-controlled organisation that has different policy settings, and I just wonder if, without it needing to be a resolution, but that's something that we do consider, that when policies are adopted by council, that we actually go back to our CCOs and seek their agreement that they'll also adopt the same policies, because it would be much more sensible if BVL are doing some stuff on community land and we are. It would be much better if we were aligned, I would have thought, under policy. Is that what other people think?
Anyone else wish to say anything in regards to the motion? Sounds like the Deputy Mayor is saying we're going to be making a submission on our own recommendations. Yeah, I fully understand. So, do we take the entire
Can I
motion?
take that then as an action, that we will look at whether we talk to BVL about adopting this policy when it's adopted?
We can definitely talk to BVL about supporting this, yes.
Thank you.
So do we take the whole motion as one, or do we take it in parts, and if so, which bits?
Mr Chair, I'm happy if my abstention is recorded for efficiency just on B3.
B3.
But yeah, you can take the whole thing if you like.
So we will take the entire motion. It is a very large one, so I'm not going to read the entire thing out. Everyone has read and is comfortable with what's being proposed? So all those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you very much. And we will note Councillor Morris abstained. Now we move on to item 9.3, policy review schedule, page 89. And we have Christine Jones and Sharon.
So,
Christine?
Yeah, this should be a relatively simple topic for you. So we were asked to provide a schedule of all of the policies that Council has. So this report gives it gives a bit of a background on policies and how they fit into the overall framework. It gives you the full list of policies, and it splits that up in the attachment by policies that are recently reviewed, those that are currently under review, and those that will be a little bit further out. And quite a lot of information about where the source comes from. So some are driven by legislation, and some have emerged because just the need for some consistency over time. We are constantly reviewing them and seeing if we can merge, refine and reduce, and you have already seen that during your term that there have been some papers come to you where we've looked to rescind some that are no longer relevant or out of date or have been superseded by legislative or other processes. So happy to take any questions.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Christine, and I think thank you very much for the paper. That's really useful for me, certainly, just to get a picture of it. And is this something that we could have as a 6-monthly, just an updated report on where we're at with them, so that we've just got it as a standard document that we know where we're at?
We do the 6-monthly work program, so we could add it to that as an attachment if you like.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Sorry, Christine, I just noticed in your report that you're talking about other councils and the volume of policy. Is it our intention, do you think, given your experience, that we should be looking to reduce the number we already have?
We do look at that regularly and see can we refine them, but we only really have ones that we think are meaningful and are adding real value. So we do merge them, and we've been doing that process for a number of years. So I think Jeremy will know if he's here. At one stage, we had over 100 from my recollection, so we have refined it considerably over the last probably 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, Christine, my comment is pretty much in relation to two policies, sub-regional community facilities funding evaluation policy and the sub-regional parks policy. Apparently we, in 2023, we received feedback from the Western Bay District Council that these did not need reviewing. What is our position on those policies? Because I think with review dates of 2007 and 2012, I think it's time we move them forward to the review. They're on page 94.
You were talking about the sub-regional parks policy, and what was the other one you spoke about?
Sub-regional community facilities funding evaluation policy.
So, yes, you could. You've also indicated that you want to have a conversation through your long-term plan about sub-regional costs that relate to services that are provided across the sub-regions. So it might be sensible to link those two pieces of work rather than do them in isolation of each other.
It would be greatly appreciated if you could link those two bits together so we can have that conversation, because I think we need to do more discussions around cross-border funding of facilities around the city.
Is it worth putting into an action, Chair?
We can definitely add it to the list. Definitely for us to be mindful of during the annual plan process, but definitely to be looked at in depth during the annual plan process.
Yeah, that's a good action.
So it's already sitting on the long-term plan list from a direction that you've given previously, and one of the things that we'll do in the new year is we'll come back to you with the things that you've identified already through your term. We've just been keeping a tab of them, things that are LTP issues, and seek direction on what other topics you specifically want to address in your LTP process. So that'll be I think it's probably about end of quarter one, early quarter two to 2026, which will frame your work program. So the sub-regional services and costs and funding is already on that list from a previous discussion.
Could we get that list as soon as it's available? I don't recall what we put on the list, but it'd be great to know what we've been banking. So it'd be useful.
Our intention is to sift back through everything and pull it together, and that will come back in the new year. So yeah, that's absolutely what we're intending to do. Yeah.
Any other questions of Christine? No? It appears the questions of staff have finished. We have a recommendation. Anyone happy? Councillor Morris is happy to move. Councillor Rolleston is happy to second. Councillor Morris, you wish to speak? Councillor Rolleston, any other? So the recommendation is that the City Future Committee receives the report policy review schedule. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Thank you. We now move on to item 9.4, quarterly update, growth, land use planning and transport strategy projects, November 2025. Andy Mead and Christine, I suppose. Welcome, Andy.
Good morning. Just do a quick introduction of the key matters, if that suits. Yeah. So just covering off the key issues in the cover report. Firstly, starting with government reforms. Quite a lot of reform in that kind of planning and growth space is upcoming. We expect the legislation for the new resource management system to be introduced to Parliament in the next week or two, alongside legislation around development levies, replacing development contributions, and also changes to the infrastructure funding and financing legislation. I guess given timeframes for legislation to be passed before the next central government election next year, we expect the select committees to consult on those bills pretty quickly, which could create some issues around that happening over the Christmas New Year kind of December January period. So we'll just have to work through that as we find out more information. So we don't know those timeframes at this point in time. Moving on to greenfield projects, a lot of work happening in the background, particularly a lot of discussion around the Tutumu project, particularly at a mayoral level, around the negotiation of key accesses and things like that. We've also started to really engage with Western Bay and the developer around the Bell Road fast track proposal called Waraki South, and which presents some issues for the city in terms of, I guess, reliance on TCC infrastructure services and the likes, and potential impacts on Tutumu in terms of infrastructure capacity. And so that will be a matter that we will report in more detail to upcoming committee or council meetings as things progress further. We're expecting that application to be lodged with the EPA in February next year is the latest information we've had. So there's been a wee bit of a delay there. They were hoping to get it in late this year, but they're still working through technical matters, including transport and transport modelling. On this committee, which is sort of more of a one-off item, we've put forward the Smart Growth Development Trends Report and also some information on future population projections. They're quite disparate, I guess, in terms of the picture they're providing. So the Development Trends Report is a report we do with Western Bay, looking back over what's happened over the last 12 months. And that's a June to June 12 months, so up till 30 June this year. Really looking at the development trends and patterns, particularly around how many houses are being consented, how many new subdivisions are being consented, but other more detailed information is around as well. It's really painting that picture, which is quite consistent with what is happening across other parts of New Zealand, that we're at the bottom of the property cycle. Building consents are very low. New subdivision consents are low, really almost at historic lows for the last 20 or 30 years. Probably Taurunga's been hit a little bit harder than Western Bay, particularly around subdivision, where their numbers are actually slightly higher than ours, whereas historically we've had the bulk of new sections consented in our city. And that coming to play there is that lack of supply that's in place. The fact that Tutumu has been delayed, and Tauriko West is still a year or so away from creating first section. So we're really most of the subdivision activity is in Waraki, and then smaller little bits of land that are in other older greenfield areas of the city. Still showing, as we have over the last few years, quite strong intensification. So while numbers are down in total, the actual percentage of intensification is reasonably good. Quite a lot of townhouses being consented, but no apartment buildings over the past 12 months. So happy to take questions on that when we come to that part of the discussion, and Ave Greenway, who's put that report together from a TCC perspective, can join me to help answer some of those. In terms of the population projections, so Stats New Zealand have been working on population projections based on the last census, the 2023 census. Was it 23? Yeah, I think. And so it's taken a couple of years for them to put those together. So those are population projections looking out for the next 30 years. And they issue projections being a low, a medium and a high scenario, recognising, I guess, the uncertainty of future population projections, both for New Zealand as a whole, but also where people will choose to live within New Zealand. Those projections were a little bit unexpected in terms of the outcome of those, that they are significantly higher than previous population projections Stats New Zealand have issued, and that we've been working to through our smart growth work. And I guess though there will be particular mandates around how those are implemented, particularly around zoning, the amount of zoning we need to do under the new planning system. There are no decisions that we need to make around those population projections at this point, but they will be a key matter including for the LTP as a key assumption on what population projections we build our next LTP on. So we'll need to bring back some further issues and options on that, probably early in the new year when we start thinking about those key LTP assumptions. I guess what's driving some of that population projection is that Stats New Zealand are assuming long-term greater net inward migration to New Zealand than they have in the past. And their, I guess, projections around, particularly the amount of births that are happening are much greater than they have previously, which is driven partly probably because of that migration, just the fact that there's more people in the country, so there'll be more people being born, but also perhaps some of those particular ethnicities that are having greater children and things like that. So we are engaging with Stats New Zealand to try and understand their projections better, and like I say, we'll bring some further information to you on that. There was I guess late in the piece of putting this report together, the government, the select committee that was considering the fast track amendment bill that was introduced pretty quickly by the government, and then they gave a week for councils and others to make submissions. So we hurriedly put together a submission, which informally I think was distributed your way. That submission has now been lodged. It was due, I think, about a week ago now. And so we've put that submission on the agenda to be retrospectively approved. If you're comfortable with that submission, the Mayor and I are speaking with the Select Committee later in the afternoon to present to our submission. That submission really focuses on, I guess, some of the shortcomings of the legislation in terms of a council's ability to be involved in a development proposal that goes through the fast track process, particularly if that development is not in that council's jurisdiction but has significant impacts on that council, which is the Waraki South example that I spoke to just earlier. And so our submission is really focused on that, and for the legislation to do a better job of dealing with the infrastructure and funding matters that can arise as a result of those developments. And so that's all I'll say about that. There is a confidential attachment to this report, and we can talk to that if the chair chooses to go, or the committee chooses to go into confidential, and we do have some further information that we can provide in terms of one of the projects addressed in that confidential attachment. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Baker.
This one's just one so I learned something new here in terms of process. What happens if we don't retrospectively approve your submission, and what gates enable you guys to do that without requiring resolution from council?
Yeah, so I guess with the timeframes here, we were conscious that it was an important matter for the council, so that's why informally we did provide a draft of that submission to you for your feedback. I guess if the committee wasn't comfortable with that, we could seek to withdraw or amend our submission. Yes.
So just for clarity, Councillor Baker, that you were away, we all did receive that and did read it, and yeah, we've seen it. It's just there was no meeting available to approve it before it had to be sent. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor?
I've got a number, if I may ask them, or I'll have a break after a couple. I guess as a starter, when I read what's actually happening with what we're planning, and what the demand is, I understand that there's a demand for more one-bedroom units, and yet we're building less two-bedroom and more three-bedroom. We're sort of talking about the trend being we'll need a smaller footprint, but they're actually getting a bigger footprint. The growth numbers are that we've got our growth is not growing as high as it is, and yet our 30-year growth requirements are getting higher. So are we doing anything that enables what we hear does need to happen, as in more single bedroom units and intensification? Are we looking at our policy settings to enable what we understand the demand is against what is actually happening? Is question one.
So I guess firstly, over the last few years, there's been a significant trend to the delivery of a much higher percentage of particularly two-bedroom homes. The last 12 months that fell back a little bit, but it's still much stronger than it was, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Equally, the size of those houses is much smaller than they were 5 or 10 years ago, even though it crept up a little bit over the last 12 months. That can fluctuate around. In terms of our broader policy settings for the zoning around our city, including through the changes we made through Plan Change 33, is very, very enabling. And so one-bedroom dwellings can be delivered anywhere in our city in multiple different forms, from standalone homes through to retirement villages or apartments. But I guess those are choices that are made by those building homes and developers and house builders, so we don't have control over that.
And then just on, can I carry on?
One supplementary.
Well, I'll have to come back. So just on page 128 in the table, attachment 3, the quarterly update, is Te Papa within existing urban areas? It's not itemised. Is there a way we can get some more, like some deep, because you said it's this is showing it's red, which I think is not good, but you said it's actually an okay trend of consent, so I'm just not sure what I read from this towards your
I saw that comment prior to the meeting, so Abe's put together some additional material which we will circulate through the governance team. They can
okay, which breaks down so we can see Te Papa.
It breaks, right. Yeah, Te Papa down.
Okay. I've just emailed you some information on that building consent, so it should be in your inbox too, Andy, but we can circulate it wider, which shows you the 10 trends over the last decade.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
yep.
Great. I'll come back for my second lot of questions later.
Do you have any other questions from councillors? Councillor Crowler?
Yeah, hi. Just wanted to check a question around the number of homes in Keenan Road. So that's something that we haven't made any formal decision about, but we have approved policy work to be going on in the background. And obviously the regional deal will be a factor and a bunch of other things will be a factor. But my question here is that we are now saying 2,500 to 3,000 homes. In the smart growth strategy, it was 2,000. That has now been described as overly aspirational, that we've had to pull back our number of dwellings. So I'm just wondering how we've got to 2,500 to 3,000, whether that's at all realistic or whether it should go perhaps in the other direction to 1,500.
So I think, are you reading from page 5 of the attachment, is that right? Page 110 of the agenda? The reference there, I think, to the 2,500 to 3,000 is that's what's identified in smart growth. Certainly the work that we're doing at the moment, identifies that the overall development area in Keenan Road is likely to be smaller than anticipated, so there would be probably less homes than that. Obviously, a lot depends on the overall density that gets delivered. So there's there's a range of homes. It's certainly not at that 2,500 to 3,000 level. And as we move that project forward a bit further, we'll be reporting back to you on the whole suite of issues, including that particular matter for Keenan Road.
Thank you, Andy. Just a quick follow-up is, can you send through to us where it says 2,500 to 3,000? Because the official consulted approved strategy talks about 2,000 as far as everything. I've just checked on it again. And it was certainly subject to discussion at the time that was, as I say, aspirational. So if there is anything anywhere in smart growth, I'm wondering how that could take precedence over a publicly consultative sort of strategy which is guiding it all.
Sure, we'll take that action and come back to you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Just on Keenan Road, so page 110, I don't think that it is particularly specified as a regional deal negotiation. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
Christine might want to jump in here, but broadly the growth in the Western Corridor is part of the city deal discussions. Keenan Road forms one of the future growth areas in that location.
So in what we submitted originally, which is the information that's been made public, is there were 3 corridors and Western Corridor is one of them, and this is part of that corridor. So obviously we can't comment in public about what's emerging out of those discussions, but certainly that was part of what was put into the mix at the beginning.
And that probably would be sensible not to say city deal negotiations. It should probably to say into the draft intention. It's just, I think it's just publicly it's saying that it is. I'm not sure. So just on the end of that page, it's saying we are not using up the budget of 496,000, and then it says it's anticipated some technical reporting costs will occur in early 26 in relation to further stormwater modelling once a preferred landform is complete. What is a preferred landform?
Yeah, so I guess when we structure plan or look at a new urban growth area, you look at it and it's got a current landform. So what it looks like at the moment, is it flat, is it hilly, where are the gullies and all that sort of thing. We've got to think ahead to go, how will that landform be altered when someone comes in to develop it in order to be able to work through how stormwater will be managed, how wastewater will be managed, how other infrastructure, how much development land will there be? Will people be able to create more land by filling gullies, knocking the top off hills and things like that, which is what we've seen consistently around that part of Tauranga, and what is going to happen in Tauriko West. So we need to work through what that landform is likely to be when development happens to be able to do all the other technical and infrastructure work associated with that growth area.
Okay, good explanation, but so that the work to do that is happening in early 2026, is that what this is saying? It says once the preferred landform is complete, so I just didn't...
So we've been doing that particular work in-house because the quotes we had to do it out-of-house were unaffordable. So it's probably taken a little bit more time, but we've got some pretty qualified engineers who are able to do that work, and then that will enable, once that work is complete, other technical work to be based on that landform. And that's so that'll the future work refers back to, say, the stormwater.
Okay, thank you. And on commercial centres on page 107, which I think is really important for the strategy we're talking about for Tauranga, and where we see it going. Third paragraph is a project plan has been completed. Have we seen that? I don't recall it, and if we haven't seen it, or either way, could I get another copy if I've already got it, please? And I would also like to be part of the communication and engagement strategy on commercial centres sub-regional strategy, because that's very much a part of what we're talking about around our table, how that might look for us going forward.
Sure, we can take that into account. I'm not sure. We have reported previously on the commercial centre strategy. I can't remember if we reported the detailed project plan or not. But
I recalled it too, but I haven't seen a project plan, so it would be great to have it, please.
Very good. Yep.
Councillor Shaw.
Just one. Thanks for this, guys. Just quickly on page 101, just compare us and compared to the other regional growth areas, where obviously in terms of consents and dwellings we're down, and you talked about supply being a big factor for us. So even how do you sort of see that graph over the next few years, even if there is a bit of a upswing in the economy? Are we likely to see us sort of languishing at the lower, and is supply going to be a real constraint, or could we see a bounce back?
I think we can definitely see a bounce back, but possibly it's still going to have some constraint because of the supply issue. given that our greenfield areas, most of them are getting pretty full. We will have Te Ariki West coming online in the next year or two. There is still quite a bit of capacity, say in Pipamara and Wairaki. But it won't be as much of a bounce back if we had Te Tumu open as well. I think we'll see intensification coming through more strongly once we go through the next property cycle, and things are looking good, because we've seen that continue even through the downturn in this cycle, and hopefully we'll get back into that apartment building side of things as well.
So speaking for myself, I have sort of one general question dealing with your dwelling projections, paragraphs 26 to 29 on page 103. Have those projections taken into account the loss of land that we've lost due to the new flooding inundation maps, overland flow storm paths, and the subsidence in some of the development areas? And if it hasn't, why not? Because we've lost some housing development, some in our smart growth projections.
So these are just overall general dwelling projections for the whole city based around population projections. So I think you're more talking about our ability to deliver on those, which are two, I guess, different things, and whether perhaps we even need to provide additional housing because we're losing some of our existing housing. So those are all factors that we'll have to take into account when we look at our ability to satisfy or how we will deliver on those projections. And I think there's also going to need to be a discussion at that smart growth level around, how much can the city realistically deliver versus how much might need to be allocated to our friends in the adjoining Western Bay district.
Thank you very much for that. Now, there's actually a public excluded element to this report. I was going to leave it to later in the day, but due to staff availability, I'd like to do that right now. So I'm asking for someone to propose it. Councillor Taylor's happy to go into public excluded. The Mayor is happy to support that. All those in favour of going into publicly excluded? Aye. Against? That is carried. We are now in public excluded.